The Shepnaz Podcast begins now.
Welcome to the Shepnaz Podcast. I'm Joe and I'm your host today. This coming Sunday, during our Because You Gave, we will be highlighting the Asia Pacific region. I had the opportunity to sit down with Pastor Dave Ackerman, who is currently serving as the Academic Dean of the Asia Pacific Nazarene Theological Seminary. Here's our discussion. So we have with us today David Ackerman, who I was getting ready to use a title, and I had written out a long list of titles. I think he can be appropriately called a missionary, a pastor, an author, a professor, a husband, a father, and a Nazarene. So welcome, Professor, author, pastor, David.
Yeah, I prefer to just call me Brother Dave, or I kind of like the title Pastor Dave.
All right. Well, we'll go with Pastor Dave then, and I'm comfortable with that too. One of the things that we're doing for Because You Gave is the Asia Pacific region, and in full disclosure, this is going to be aired on Tuesday. And it's Monday night as I'm talking to you, but it is Tuesday morning for you. So actually, we're talking before it's even going to, like as it's happening for real. So tell us a little bit about where you are right now, your setting, and what your current position is, and then we're going to go back a little bit and tell a little bit of your story.
Sure. All right. Well, thanks. Great to be with you, Joe, and whoever might be listening in. So I'm sitting in my office in the Nielsen Center for Education and Evangelism at the campus of Asia Pacific Nazarene Theological Seminary. We are located on the edge of Metro Manila, Philippines. Manila is a massive city of, some people estimate, 30 million people. I have a picture on my phone I took a couple weeks ago that shows high rises all across the horizon. So I've been serving in this position for 1 year, but I've been associated with the seminary off and on for going on 24 years. And so I live here with my wife, Rhonda, and our daughter, Shan, lives with us as well. My son, Joel, lives in Boise, Idaho, and is developing a videography and photography business there.
Wonderful. It's great to be able to talk with you and to get to know you a little better. You had mentioned, you said Manila was about 30 million, is that right?
Right.
That's just a crazy number for me to think about because, we're sitting in Ohio, in the state of Ohio. I think the total population for the state of Ohio is about 11 million. And it's actually, a decent sized state. But to imagine almost 3 times that in the area that you're talking and only having a third of that in our entire state is pretty amazing. So what we wanted to do is to get to know you a little better, Pastor Dave. And if you would just kind of give us your personal walk of faith, how it was that you came to Christ, and then we'll go a little bit into, how that turned into a call into ministry.
Sure. Well, I was raised in the Church of the Nazarene. My parents actually met in the youth group in Spokane, Washington when they were young and got married. They were lifelong Nazarenes. They raised us in the Church of the Nazarene. I'm 5 of 6 children, and so I'm on the younger side of all of my siblings. So I grew up knowing the Bible stories and going to Sunday school, and anytime the church doors were open, that saying goes, we were there. So my parents were faithful lay people and did what they could to raise us the best they knew how. Of course, there's always challenges in every family. So, there are always some challenges growing up. But I would say overall, they did their best that they could to raise us in a Christian home. When I was in junior high, I made Jesus not just simply someone I knew about in the stories, but became personal to me. We had a great youth leader who volunteered, and wasn't a large church, maybe about 100 people. And we had a good youth group. I really believe in youth ministry. And our youth leader, Ken Eckert, invested a lot in us. It was at a fall revival service when I was about 15 years old when I went up at the altar call and gave myself completely to the Lord and began to sense a call to ministry. No one in my family is in ministry. And so that was just, something I just felt God leading me into. I was given my first local minister's license when I was about 16. And then I had a pastor who let me preach once in a while, like once every 3 or 4 months on a Sunday night service. He would call me to say, okay, it's your turn to preach a sermon. So, those were very interesting days for me. I was a very quiet, shy person and never would say much in front of people. But, God somehow gave me the gifts. I remember going to Northwest Nazarene University as, I think it was for a regional quizzing event, and attended a class by Dr. Joseph Mayfield. And he wrote me back personally, which was really impressive to a high schooler. And I remember a phrase he wrote in that letter that has become my life phrase. He wrote, "Whatever God calls you to do, He will enable you to perform." And that really spoke a lot to me because I believed God had called me, but I had doubts about myself. I was a quiet, shy person, didn't say much, but yet God placed that call in my life and nurtured that over the years, and gave me confidence, over time to be able to speak in front of people. And so I don't know how much time you want to take with my whole story.
No,
but
you're good. You're good.
I had the idea of going to college. No one in my family had gone to college and graduated. So I went to college and Northwest Nazarene University. I had the goal of graduating without a loan, and my family had no money to help me. And so by God's grace and scholarships and living in the basement of a dorm or a house with other people, living on macaroni and cheese, I graduated without a loan.
Well, praise the Lord.
And then went on to seminary, and when I was in seminary, I just had plans to be a pastor, but one of the professors, Dr. Morris Weigelt, asked me to be his assistant and to grade papers and things like that. And I got to thinking, maybe I could do this. I had no idea what a doctorate was, but God planted that idea in my mind and went on for doctoral studies. I met my wife in college, and we dated throughout college and got married just before graduation, our senior year. Moved to Kansas City for seminary, and from there moved on to Denver, Colorado, where I was a pastor and then did doctoral studies. During the latter part of seminary and into my doctoral studies, my wife Rhonda and I were thinking about what would we do in the future, and we were both interested in missions and began to talk with Nazarene Missions about our future. And so how we ended up coming to the Philippines is kind of an interesting little story. And it was about 1998, one of our friends had stopped here at APNTS on their way to China, and they put out a newsletter, so I got their newsletter, and I noticed that it said that that APNTS did not have a New Testament professor. So I was finishing my doctoral studies and thought, well, maybe I could go there for, teach a class during the summer. So I contacted the president, who didn't know me, but he checked me out. So we ended up coming as a family in 1998, and I taught a 6-week course. And it was about the same time we were interviewing with Nazarene Global Missions about weeks doing mission work. Well, it ended up that we felt really welcome here at APNTS, and they needed someone in New Testament. And so it all came together, and we came here in 1999, full time. And I began teaching New Testament.
Our kids ministry team is busy right now planning Jingle Jam. Your kids will have a blast with fun crafts, joyful music, crazy games, and you'll get to hear a story full of hope in this incredible Christmas season. That will happen on December 2nd here in Gahanna, and then the next Saturday morning on December 9th in Johnstown at the Youth for Christ building. Pre-register as soon as you can at shepnaz.org or use the QR code on these invitations available in the lobby.
So were you doing kind of dual duty at that point? Or was it exclusively just, teaching for New Testament there at APNTS, or was there other ministry going on in addition to that?
No, we became full-time missionaries in 1999, and I became a full-time professor here. Of course, when a person teaches at a seminary like this, there's always other kinds of duties. So eventually I became interested in the technology and helped develop website and other things, all self-taught. And but yeah, mostly just teaching here at the seminary.
Wonderful. And you had mentioned your wife, Rhonda, and she also, didn't she become ordained in the church, and she also was involved in ministry as well?
Yes, she was actually the first graduate at NNU with a compassionate ministry degree. I don't think they offer that degree anymore. I don't think there are too many graduates. When we were in Kansas City, she was looking for a job and got a job at a hospital working as a secretary and became interested in nursing. So while we were in Kansas City, she got a nursing degree towards the end of my seminary. And so she's also a registered nurse. She became our primary support for many years working in a hospital. And when we came to the Philippines, she helped out with campus nursing. Now she does not want to do nursing anymore. It was very hard on her. She very physically and mentally challenging working in a hospital. So she's used her nursing skills. Now she works with member care, and she's like a pastor to the missionaries on our field. And so that's a special ministry.
That is a wonderful ministry to be a part of. I kind of smiled when you mentioned that she was a nurse, because I think somewhere that's like an unwritten guideline for many Nazarene pastors is to have your wife go into nursing or something in the medical field, because it's amazing to me how many that I've spoken to over the years that actually have a very similar situation. And shout out to Pastor Joey, our family life pastor. Actually, his wife is in nursing as well. So it's something that we see all the time. But it is amazing how the Lord works that out when He builds our partnerships with our spouses to make sure that all the needs are taken care of and the ministry is taken care of as well.
Yeah.
I would like to ask you, kind of as you were finishing your training and deciding, what am I doing in ministry? What is God calling me to do into ministry? In some of your past experiences, you'd mentioned that you were a pastor in some different areas. And how was it that the Lord kind of led you to do something in global missions, even though you had previously been part of like a pastor in a local church? Could you tell us a little bit about that call that's like, I need to step out of my comfort zone. I need to go to another place.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's kind of an interesting story. I remember back when I was a teenager, I think this was around the time I had my call into ministry. I applied to the Nazarene World Youth Congress, kind of at the last minute. This was held in Mexico. And our district only had a small number of people who could go. And so my friend talked me into going. And I remember on the application, there was some kind of line that said, what do you want to do when you grow up? Kind of one of those kind of questions. And I remember putting missionary there. And I'm not sure why. But growing up, I read all the missionary books that were in our church and always enjoyed listening to missionaries, kind of fascinated by, the other parts of the world. And so I think there was just, there was this pull from early on in my life to think about the world and think about, serving as a missionary. And so I talked with my wife, and as we were thinking about future ministry, there was a strong pull to Nazarene missions, but I also had this growing interest in the academic world. So if I was going to be a missionary, how could I best be used? And so if I wanted to teach in one of our colleges or Bible colleges, it would be helpful if I had a doctorate. And so that was one of my motivations in pursuing my doctorate. And I would say it's kind of like one door opened after another. And just that pull and that deep interest and desire to go someplace else in the world and just be in a little place where, it's kind of familiar and I know everything. So there's part of the story I didn't share. Why did we leave in 2008?
Mm-hmm.
Well, in 2002, both of our children are adopted. And in 2002, our daughter Shan started having challenges with her epilepsy. And it's very difficult to get help here in Manila. I mean, it'd take a couple hours to drive across town to a hospital or to the doctor. And it finally got to the point where we just needed to either do something, And it was about that time that our Bible college in Australia contacted me about going to teach there. So we thought, well, maybe that would be a good situation for her. So we did transfer there, and Shan improved. We transferred back to APNTS in 2005, and Shan was doing well for about 3 years. And then around 2008, it just got really bad again for her. She would have seizures, and it was really frustrating and a lot of stress for us. And we finally had to resign as missionaries and come back to the U.S. Well, over the next few years, Shan had several major surgeries, and that helped in some ways. In 2015, she had her last major surgery that stopped her seizures. Throughout those years, I was pastoring and Rhonda was doing some nursing work. We always kept in touch with this part of the world and helped out where we could from remote. And always had, if there was a missionary coming through from this part of the world, we had them at our church.
Wonderful.
And then in 2016, we were just ready to do something else. And we thought, well, if Shan's doing well, let's check with Nazarene Missions if we could go back. So we knocked on the door with the condition that we would take Shan with us. By this point, she was 21 years old, and we were her legal guardians. And so we did not know if they would have us back or not. And within a day, they wrote back and said, sure, we'd love to have you come back. And so we did not know where they would send us. And so they had a need here in the Philippines. And so that's how we ended up coming back into missions in 2016. And so that's why Shan lived with us. She's 28 years old. Nazarene Missions has been very flexible with us. And so we've just been blessed in that way.
Well, we'll leave it there for today's episode. I hope you've enjoyed getting to know Pastor Dave a little bit, and tomorrow we will continue that conversation as we pick up of what God called him to next and what's currently going on at the Asia Pacific Nazarene Theological Seminary. As always, you can follow what's going on at the church with the church website at shepnaz.org. Also follow us on social media. And if you have any questions or comments, you can email us at podcast@shepnaz.org. For Pastor Dave, I'm Joe. Have a great day. This podcast is a production of the Shepherd Church of the Nazarene, Gahanna, Ohio. Email to podcast@shepnaz.org and let us know what you think.